Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today. One of my favorite things to do is get together with family and friends and go see live music. As a matter of fact, sometimes I like a band so much, I'll go see them multiple times on the same tour. It's a nice reason to travel and just go see other places. Today's case is about two men that are going to see one of their favorite bands. Unfortunately, they never make it there. And we wind up with two families that are desperately searching for justice. Now, I think there's a chance they might be close, but they still need help to make sure that this comes through. So we're going to look into that case today, starting at Wikipedia so we can learn where this takes place. George Washington. And no, we're not talking about the first president. George is a city in Grant County, Washington, United States. The population was 501 as of the 2010 census. The humorous homage to President George Washington has landed George Washington on lists of unusual place names. The city is known for being near the Gorge Amphitheater, sometimes called the Gorge at George. And they actually even include a pic of it here at Wikipedia. It looks like a beautiful venue. I mean, look at that scenery behind it. So who is the band that is playing in June of 2019? That would be Dead and Company. Essentially, some of the members of the Grateful Dead that are still playing together joined up with John Mayer and went on tour. And of course, all the Deadheads came out, and some of them did what Deadheads do. They go to multiple stops and follow this band all across the country. This is the poster for the Gorge at George show, and we can see that it's taking place June 8th at the Gorge Amphitheater in 2019. Unfortunately, what would result is a missing persons investigation for not one, but for two people. And here we see it's kind of unique for a missing poster to feature two people like this. Josiah, or Joe, Hilderbrand, missing since the 7th of June, 2019. And then here near the bottom, they have another picture of a man named John Cleary. Now, Joe Hilderbrand is 25 years old. John Cleary is 48 years old at the time that they go missing. Let's get into the details. This is going to be a little bit like a searchlight, but unfortunately, we do find their remains. So this will press into more of a brain scratch as we go on. Missing under suspicious circumstances. A Mendocino mother searches for her only son. This article is from June 24th, 2019. Liz Hilderbrand is hoping someone somewhere has information about her son. Josiah Hilderbrand, age 25, was last known to be headed to the Gorge Amphitheater in Washington State with another man, John Cleary, on June 7th. So they're coming from California, essentially, and making that drive. We're talking many, many hours, probably something like I would imagine around a 10-hour drive. Maybe even more. Both of the two men are missing under suspicious circumstances. Their route to Washington State is unclear. Liz says she doesn't even know if John Cleary and her son got together in Southern California or in the Bay Area to travel north. I just want to know where my son is. Am I even a mom anymore? I'm afraid I'm never going to hear him laugh again. And here is a picture of Liz and Josiah with, I believe they're Liz's dogs. The vehicle Josiah and John were last seen in is a light blue 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid. It was found abandoned in the county of Yakima in Washington State, and this is a photo of a similar type of car. A deputy with the Yakima County Sheriff's Office who was trying to track down why a blue Honda Civic had been abandoned under odd circumstances in his area had contacted the listed owner, she explained. That person, a previous owner, said a man named John Cleary had been driving the vehicle recently. So what I understand is essentially John had just recently purchased this vehicle from someone else. And I think the paperwork wasn't even done processing yet. So when they found the car, they went and contacted the registered owner. That was a lady, and she was able to tell them, I don't have this car anymore. A man named John Cleary does. Later, it was learned that John had last texted a friend showing a photo of him and another man in the Honda. And here is the photo, and we can clearly see that is John and Josiah. This photo was taken in the Honda Civic at about 4:45 p.m. on June 7th. That photo taken only a matter of hours before the car would be found in these suspicious circumstances, which I know we haven't identified yet, but we'll get into much more detail about as we continue here. Investigation continues. This article from June 25th, 2019. The car they were traveling in, a light blue 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid with California plates, was found abandoned June 8th in an orchard at 8100 Lateral B Road in Toppenish. Let me just go ahead and bring up a map real quick so we get a sense. So we think they were possibly coming from the Bay Area, so I've got it starting from there. And we can see this is a 13-hour drive all the way to the Gorge Amphitheater. But if we zoom in here, we will see where the car is found a little bit off the track of the major highways. And if we take a look at what that area looks like actually from the ground level, yeah, clearly out in the middle of an orchard, it looks like it's close to just one home, and that's about it. There's nothing else around here. It's just pretty much wide open land. What did they find on the vehicle? According to this article, authorities conducted a search warrant on the vehicle and didn't find much. Now, that's what these early reports are saying. I can tell you as we keep diving into the details, we're going to hear they found a little more than that. FBI joins investigation on June 28th, 2019. FBI spokesperson Steve Byrne confirmed that the agency is involved. Quote, at the request of the Yakima County Sheriff's Office, the FBI is assisting with its investigation into the disappearance of two men. The FBI routinely offers assistance to our law enforcement partners in order to provide additional personnel and specialized resources. And keep in mind, kind of the simple rule that I keep hearing for FBI involvement is if there's a crime that crosses state lines. Now, we don't necessarily have that happening in this case. We do have the men that are crossing state lines, but we don't know about the elements of the crime and any of that involving some type of travel into or out of the state. So even my first time looking through this case, I was kind of wondering, how do we get the FBI involved so quickly in a case of this nature? It's a little different if the men had been seen in Washington, went missing, their car is then found in Oregon or something like that. I think that's pretty much an easy reach to the FBI for help in a case like that. This one seems a little bit different, and we're going to see things progress kind of really fast here. I mean, it already is. We've got the FBI commenting that they're going to help, and this is only a few weeks after the disappearance. Then we get this article, search is now a homicide investigation. Originally posted at the Daily Pilot, this is actually being hosted by the LA Times online. Here's a picture of John Cleary. And this article is from July 5th. So within a month, we go missing persons investigation. FBI involvement comes in very quickly, now being considered a homicide investigation. And at least publicly, we don't have a lot of details as to why. Yakima County Sheriff's Department spokesman Casey Shilperort states, it's been a long time since anyone's talked to them. As far as anyone knows, it's not like they're trying to avoid anyone. Cleary had followed Dead & Company since the band kicked off a summer tour in the Bay Area. He then headed to a show at the Hollywood Bowl a few days later. Cleary and Hilderbrand were en route to the tour's third stop in central Washington, and Cleary planned to continue to the East Coast. Cleary was last heard from late June 6th when he sent text messages to at least 4 people, the friend said. The last message was that the two were about 90 minutes from Gorge Amphitheater. It was sent around midnight. It's unclear whether anyone else was traveling with Cleary and Hilderbrand. That's one of the things that's unfortunate about that photo that we looked at earlier. You really can't tell. I mean, they could have people in the back seat and you just wouldn't have any idea from that particular angle. But seeing that he's taken a picture, I think he's trying to document the fact that they're driving to this concert together. If there was other people, wouldn't he have taken pictures of them, maybe texted those as well? I don't know. Now, from everything that I've heard and read about the Deadhead community, This is a pretty close, tight-knit group. I mean, you're talking about people that are traveling, bumping into each other, show after show after show, developing relationships, but also, from what I understand, pretty caring and helpful people. That might actually play into a little bit of the conditions around the disappearances that we see here. But I also want to point out that I think it extends, or maybe even starts from, the actual musicians themselves. Back to another article at yakimaherald.com. Sunday marks 1 month. Dead & Company drummer Mickey Hart posted on June 18th about the missing men, along with photos of them. "We're sharing in hopes that someone out there knows something. Please share and spread the word if you can," he wrote. Monet Weir, daughter of Grateful Dead founder and Dead & Company member Bob Weir, shared a photo of a missing person flyer for Hilderbrand on Instagram. I've seen some statements from the family members also being very appreciative of this community and their help in this search for the two missing men. Over at KIMATV.com, May 14th, 2020, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is asking the public for help. So we're getting almost to a year of them missing, and we now have the FBI just reaching out, asking for help. But we're also getting new details and maybe a possible explanation as to why the FBI got involved so early. Investigators say both men were heading to a concert. On June 8th, 2019, the FBI says the vehicle was found abandoned and partially burned in Wapato. That's a big new piece of information that we didn't have before. So it's not like they just found the car at the side of the road and then two men were missing. Now they're seeing that the car was burned. Why was it burned? Was someone trying to cover up a crime, hide evidence? I think that's one of the major factors probably that brought the FBI in so soon. Also notes the FBI is offering a reward of up to $10,000 for information. That's on top of a reward that was put out by the family. I believe at this point they have it at about $15,000 or so from the family. So a total of $25,000, as you can see here on this poster. Over at NBCRightNow.com, 1 year since the disappearance, 25-year-old Josiah Hilderbrand and 47-year-old John Cleary were making the nearly 12-hour drive from Northern California to George Washington for a concert. The car they were driving was found bloody and partially burned. So we're getting even more detail. And now the burning might make more sense because we're having much more obvious signs of a crime happening in there. Liz Hilderbrand said, "He was a sweet, loving boy." When she found out that the car her son was traveling in was found, she says in her heart that she knew her son was gone. It wasn't fear-based or pessimism. It wasn't despair. I would say it was more on a spiritual plane, spiritual level. I knew he was gone. I knew he was gone. It took nearly 6 months to get a DNA result on the blood in the car. When that DNA came back, it was a match. It's interesting because it's not telling us if it's a match for both of the men. I kind of assume that they might have found both of their blood in the vehicle. Hilderbrand said, "I felt a sense of relief when the DNA came back. Why? Maybe because we had a definitive placement of him in the vehicle, because I felt like the case was advancing. There was relief because I don't know, when you wait a long time for any kind of answers, then any answers coming in are relieving." Can't imagine what she's going through. Her only son. Josiah was an aspiring firefighter that wanted to help people in need, and it's noting that the FBI is still investigating. So a few critical details about the status of the car that we've now found. We have the mother saying that she felt like her son was gone. And we're just left with a little bit of a question in terms of, yes, they've matched the blood. We know that it matches to Josiah. We don't necessarily have a definitive if it also matches to John. We have no commentary in terms of the amount. That could be a strong indicator of, is there a possibility they could still be alive, that they were just injured and then removed from the vehicle or something along those lines. Let's go ahead and continue at Yakima Herald with another article. They need closure. Families of men who went missing in Yakima County ask for public's help. And this is from June 2020, just after the 1 year anniversary. John Joseph Cleary of Huntington Beach, California, kept in regular touch with his mother in Florida and his father and sister in Tennessee. A big kid at 47, he had a wide circle of friends, many of them devoted fans of the Grateful Dead and Dead and Company. I can still hear the sheriff from Yakima County calling me up and saying those words. "We believe your brother has been murdered," Cleary's sister, Jessica Wesner, said in a letter to the Yakima Herald-Public. I broke that day. Crushed beyond any explanation, my world and self would never be the same. Wesner and other family members and friends think Hilderbrand and Cleary stopped to help someone or pick up hitchhikers later in their long drive. Some believe it happened on Highway 97 from Golden Ale to Toppenish, where traffic thins to a trickle from dusk to dawn and homes and businesses are sparse as the highway moves through dense woods and vast stretches of rolling shrub. The men wouldn't think twice about offering help or giving someone a ride, just like many devoted Grateful Dead fans, relatives, and friends said. There's evidence they stopped to offer help to people, and that's when authorities feel they were robbed and murdered, Wesner wrote. Once again, we're not getting the detail of what that evidence is. Also, where did they stop? Seems to me that the location where the vehicle's found is a drop location. We know that police aren't coming forward and saying, hey, we found 2 bodies near the location of the car. So is there another spot where they have found something, maybe some article of clothing or something that belongs to the men? We're not hearing any of those details, but the sister's being pretty clear here. First, on 2 things. Number one, that the authorities came to them very early in the investigation and said, we think that your brother's dead. But outside of that, there's some form of indicator that someone else got into that vehicle at some point. And, maybe the logic around that isn't too tough when you consider the vehicle somewhere else. We don't know where the 2 guys are. More from the sister. I'm asking the people of Yakima and Yakima Reservation with a heavy heart to please contact the authorities if you have any information as to where my brother and Josiah are. My parents are in their 70s, and we need to lay our beloved John to rest in the manner he deserves. John and Josiah's families need closure. They both need to be found and brought home to their loved ones. Now, just jumping ahead a little bit, they are found at this point, but I just want to reemphasize this call. They now need details about what happened to these guys. This is still being handled with the FBI actually being the primary at this point. So in the description box down below, you'll find contact information specifically for the FBI. And we're looking for people that have more pieces of this puzzle. Maybe you saw that vehicle at some point. Maybe you saw someone around that vehicle. Maybe you've heard from someone talking about what happened to them or that vehicle. We're hoping that this is coming towards a trial, and you guys will see why by the end of this episode. But I still feel like there's some pieces out there that need to be filled in, and I'm sure the family would appreciate people stepping up and doing that. Quote, "He's not in his body anymore. I get that," said Josiah's mother, Liz. "But I gave birth to him. I literally made those bones. Those bones came from my body. I want them back." I've never heard such words from a mother that just reach in and wrench on my heart. This is someone, I haven't even brought all the information forward. She's been so clear about what Josiah meant to her. It's terrible. It's terrible for them to know this and to not know where their loved ones are at this point. Their families have marked their birthdays without them. Cleary's in August and Hilderbrand's in February. Liz Hilderbrand held a memorial service for her son, her only child, on August 24th, 2019. Dozens missing and murdered. Cleary and Hilderbrand are among people of all ages listed as missing in and around Yakima County at over 4,000 square miles. It's the second largest county in Washington. Within those 2.7 million acres is land that ranges from Mount Adams and its snowy slopes to densely wooded backcountry and rough high desert. Dozens of Native women and girls, men and boys have gone missing. have been found murdered and have died mysteriously on and around the reservation in cases that stretch back over decades. Most are unsolved. Of course, we've talked several times about Indigenous missing and murdered cases here on the channel. Wesner wrote, "Something needs to be done. There is a problem in this area and action needs to be taken so this heartbreak of good people and families can end. People that are traveling through this area need to be made aware also." I get her point. I just don't know how you put that out there. I think that's a big part of what motivates me to do this type of work, to try to help the families, to try to raise exposure, and hopefully get in front of the person that has the information and move them by sharing the family's words of what they're going through, move them to action to pick up that phone. But there's another aspect about it, and that's for raising the level of awareness to this story so that we all hear about things like this, about that area having a concentration of unsolved missing and murdered cases. I mean, how do you publicize that? You can't put signs up on the road, "Hey, you're about to enter this area. Did you know? Here's the stats for these types of cases." It's really challenging. I get the logic of wanting that and trying to help others avoid this type of heartbreak. I don't know what the mechanism is. If you guys have ideas on that, please share it in the comments down below. I'm definitely looking for some more feedback and thought on that. Back to the Yakima Herald, and let me just thank them. Obviously, we're leaning on them quite a bit. They did very good coverage on this case all the way up to today. So I'm thankful that we've got local reporters working hard out there on this. Remains found. This is posted August 6th, 2020. Before we get into the details, just stop and think about that for a moment. It's already terrible when you're dealing with a missing persons case and you get to the 1 year mark. But this is a missing persons case where you've been told by law enforcement at some point in that first year, probably very close to the start of it, that they think your loved one has been murdered. So getting to find their remains or to find them is just the first step. And you know there's much more to the journey that you have to do after that. Thankfully, they do get to that first step, but obviously they're still facing a long road ahead. Let's hear about the details. A road crew working on US Highway 97 about 10 miles south of Toppenish found what turned out to be human remains, FBI spokesman Steve Burns said. The FBI and Yakima County Sheriff's Office responded to the scene. Contractors were milling the road before putting down chip seal when somebody spotted something that looked questionable. One of the articles I saw said that it was someone that was working in a large piece of equipment. He looked off to the side and saw what he thought were bones. I've kind of heard two different versions. Then they went to see the bones. They saw there was clothing around it and skulls, and they knew they were talking about bodies. The other version I've heard is that he was possibly looking for antlers, that it was just something that he would do while he's working, kind of look off in the side and see if he could find any antlers. But one way or another, they do find the bones and remains of two people out there. The worker called over a WSDOT, Department of Transportation inspector, and they called 911 and secured the scene. And this is what the scene looked like when it was secured. We can see tons of law enforcement vehicles, half of the lane basically closed off, but you can see the large equipment that's also out here working on repaving it. I'm pretty sure it was one of the workers from this crew that made the discovery. And down here you have the tents that are covering up where the remains were found. If we take a look at it on the map, so we've got the car found in this area. They're saying it was about 10 miles south. So somewhere around here is where this scene is. So it does certainly, the story is starting to fit. They're driving up 97. Maybe they stop to help someone in some way. There's some type of hijacking that happens. The men are killed at this location, moved off the road. The people that did it, person or persons, get back in the vehicle and then take off for some reason, dump the vehicle at this spot, And that raises an interesting point. Why did they dump it at this spot in particular? Did they meet up with someone? Did they have some other means of transportation? Is this close to something that was easy for them to get to? I don't know. I'm kind of curious about why the vehicle gets dropped here, but that's what it's starting to look like here. Let's go ahead and continue. Remains ID'd as missing 25-year-old California man, and that only took a week, August 13th, 2020. One of two sets of human remains found south of Toppenish last week has been identified as Josiah Michael Joe Hilderbrand, and he was identified through dental records, according to the county coroner, Jim Curtis. Curtis said work continues to identify the second set of remains. Obviously, knowing the details of the case, they're pretty sure they know who it is, but they need a solid confirmation. Hilderbrand's death has been ruled a homicide. Cause of death remains under investigation. From the description I was hearing in terms of how they were found and considering how long that they were out there, I think we're talking pretty much skeletonized remains. So them figuring out the actual cause of death is probably going to be pretty difficult unless there's some type of obvious damage to the skeletonized remains. We're hopeful that justice will be served to the individual or individuals responsible for these tragic and senseless deaths, Curtis said. The remains were discovered August 5th by that road crew. It was the same day that 5 people were brutally killed in an area nearby called White Swan. Authorities have declined to comment on whether the two crimes are related. Might want to keep that in the back of your head. We're going to get back to that by the end of this episode. Continuing at kimatv.com, the Yakima County coroner says investigators keep hitting roadblocks trying to confirm the identity of the second set of skeletal remains, and it could be quite some time until they get a positive identification. Coroner Jim Curtis tells Action News that many dental offices purge their records after a certain number of years, and so far they haven't had any success in getting records that they could use to potentially confirm the second set of remains as Cleary, which is interesting because this isn't them coming from a totally cold position of having no idea who it is. They know who they're trying to match it up to, so they know the areas that Cleary lived in. They can go to those areas, go to the local dentists, ask them, try to track down his history of where he was going, and they're still having trouble finding the records for this guy. Curtis said they may have to do DNA testing to confirm the identity, but that could take months for results. Thankfully, a few weeks later, they actually crack this. The Yakima County Coroner's Office confirms it has identified the second set of skeletal remains found south of Toppenish as 49-year-old John Joseph Cleary. The manner of death for both Cleary and Hilderbrand is homicide. His remains were identified by dental recognition by a forensic odontologist. Was kind of curious about that. I looked into it a little bit. Thankfully, there's an article that talks specifically about how it happened in this case. Forensic odontologists help identify unknown remains by taking photographs, cranial measurements, dental impressions, and x-rays. When the forensic odontologist studied the teeth in the second set of remains, he found they had distinctive attributes, Curtis said. He took pictures of the teeth, and we got a bunch of pictures of John smiling. By that, he was able to do the identification. It was a great break for us. Otherwise, DNA would take a while. We're still waiting on DNA on another decedent, and it's been almost 6 months. Cleary would have been 49 on August 25th. His father, younger sister, brother, and nephew, who all live in Tennessee, gathered for a small dinner in his honor that day. His sister, Jessica Wesner, said he lived life to the fullest in the moment. And after what he endured in life, I'm grateful he did. He was and will always be my very best friend with a heart of gold, with a smile and laugh that made people smile. I just feel like there's something almost kind of poetic. I've seen several pictures of this guy. He's smiling all the time. And it's through that smile in those pictures that they were able to get this identification locked in so soon. I kind of think that that's pretty special. Disappearance of 2 California men possibly related to White Swan homicides. So we heard a little mention about it before. What are we talking about? How does this case possibly apply here? Yakima County Sheriff's spokesperson Casey Shilperort says there's a possibility that the Hilderbrand and Cleary homicides are connected to the White Swan homicides. The abandoned vehicle was found on the morning of June 8th, with the report coming into the sheriff's office just before 10 a.m. 6 hours later, the sheriff's office received reports of a shooting at 5151 Medicine Valley Road, which would ultimately take the lives of 5 people. This apparently is a terrible, terrible scene. They're saying one of the worst crime scenes that they've seen in the county, certainly within the past few decades. 5 people all killed at this home, a matter of hours after what has happened to Hilderbrand and Cleary. And just to kind of put this map back together again, the location where the car is found is here. And from there to Medicine Valley Road, to that specific address, looks like it's maybe another 10 miles, maybe 12 miles. And we're talking a 6-hour difference. Quite honestly, that's enough time that they could have walked from dropping off that car and got to that location. I'm not saying I think that's necessarily what happened. I think there's something else at play here. I don't want to dive into the White Swan case too hard because I don't know what the connectivity is like. We're going to talk about the strongest points that I think are making that connectivity possible with this case. But there's 2 main suspects. There's 2 other suspects in that case that might have played some role in this as well. And it might be something as simple as they came and picked up these guys from somewhere. I don't know. I can't speak too much to it. But just to give you a bit of a sense of what's going on here, it does look pretty localized. I mean, we have the bodies found down here. We have the car dropped here. We have 5 more people that are killed here. And within pretty much a 24-hour period. White Swan murder suspect pleads not guilty to armed carjacking. James Dean Cloud pleaded not guilty Friday in federal court to charges of carjacking and brandishing a firearm during a violent crime. Cloud is one of the suspects accused of killing 5 people Saturday in White Swan and robbing a family of their vehicle with a gun to their child's head, according to court documents. This is not a good person. And we have him taking a vehicle, which once again leads me to believe he's maybe possibly on foot or been dropped off by someone, but obviously he needs means of transportation. And are we seeing an MO there? Is he just gone into this direction where he's going to kill people and still steal vehicles? I'm thankful they seem to have him arrested so soon, but he's also got, as noted here, an extensive and repetitive criminal background. He has a history of escape attempts, obstructing law enforcement, fleeing from officers, and putting the community at risk while attempting to evade arrest. This article even goes into the fact that they've got this guy extra cuffed up. Basically, when they're bringing him into court, they think he's kind of an elevated flight risk. There's a lot going on here. Cloud has been arrested and charged with a crime at least 21 times over the past 2 decades. He's been convicted in a little over half of those, resulting in a total of 17 charges where he was found guilty. And then there's also a mention here of Donovan Quinn Carter Cloud, who is also charged with carjacking and brandishing a firearm during a violent crime in connection with the case. He didn't appear Friday as he was awaiting extradition from Oregon. They caught him in Oregon. He wasn't back in the state yet. So, and these guys, several of the articles I'm seeing are referring to them as brothers, but we're going to see some other information says they might actually be cousins that call each other brothers. But another article from Yak Tri News, 2 additional victims linked to White Swan homicides. James Cloud and his brother, Donovan Cloud, were arrested after authorities said they shot and killed 5 people June 8th, 2019. At a hearing Tuesday morning, federal prosecutors said the brothers may face new charges in connection with 2 other killings. While the identity of the victims was not disclosed in that meeting, previous information released about the case suggests prosecutors may be referring to the case of 2 California men, Josiah Hilderbrand and John Cleary. Defense attorneys expressed concerns about potential charges stemming from the 2 additional victims. If charged with and convicted of those killings, they said the brothers could be facing the federal death penalty. While capital punishment has been abolished in Washington state, the federal death penalty applies in all 50 states and U.S. territories, but is used relatively rarely, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. With the trial scheduled for January, defense attorneys said they need to know all the charges their clients are facing soon in order to prepare their defense. Prosecutors said they're still waiting on evidence from the new case and cannot yet make a charging decision. Now, I haven't found any articles saying that Josiah and John's cases have officially been added to these charges yet. And I'm kind of curious. I don't know if maybe they'll try them for the White Swan murders and then run these charges in a separate trial. I'm not sure what the benefit would be of combining those all in one necessarily. I mean, we're talking about kind of 2 separate instances. I mean, yes, if you're looking at the perspective of these 2 guys doing all that, it seems like they went on a rampage for this day. But I don't know enough about the legal logistics of it to is there a benefit to adding them both to that case? And we don't really know about physical evidence, like how solid is this case against the 2. But I did find some notes that we can go over that might have one very important piece of evidence that could kind of pull this all together. We're going to review an article from kimkemp.com and roll back the clock a little bit. This article was actually published May 20th, 2020, just coming up on the 1st anniversary of their disappearance before they were found. But there's another piece of critical information about what was found at that car. The vehicle they were found in was found abandoned, partially burned. We remember that. Also from the other article, we heard there was blood inside of it. But according to this article, inside the vehicle were bullet casings that matched the bullet casings found at the White Swan killings. So now we've got potentially some physical evidence. I don't know if that could be forensically linked. I don't know if there's some type of special marking that would happen on a bullet casing as it's being ejected that you could say came from this specific weapon and it matches this other bullet casing. I've never quite heard of a case of that nature, but at least they know the type of weapon that they're looking for. Hearing that the casings are found inside the vehicle is kind of interesting to me because it just makes me think of what's going on during that scene. Is there a chance that one of the bullets, the actual bullets, is still in the vehicle as well? And maybe that can be tested forensically to the White Swan scene. I don't know. Josiah Hilderbrand's mother, Liz, explained that the 2 Cloud cousins, they call themselves brothers, are charged in connection with the 5 killed at White Swan. Of course, at this time, there was no mention at all about any charges for John and Josiah's cases. She told us that authorities believe that her son and John Cleary saw the suspects broken down beside the road and stopped to help them. Joe and John were killed. Their bodies were dumped and their car was stolen, she said. And keep in mind, she's saying this before their remains have been found. Eventually, it is believed the suspects tried to burn Cleary's car, and then she says the next day they went on to kill all those other people. They killed 5 people there, she added. Josiah and John were killed for literally nothing. They had nothing of value on them. She had written on her Facebook page, "He was my only child. That part of my life is done. No kids, no grandkids, no one to care for me when I'm old and frail. My greatest fear is growing old alone. That fear has always been there, but I knew I would always have him no matter what. What I have learned now is that I don't know anything. Many of our greatest plans and most of our worst fears will be dashed by unforeseen circumstances, both tragedy and blessings that seem to come out of nowhere. I have gained some deep knowledge, some upper level of wisdom that I never wanted and don't suggest you aspire to. The price still seems too great, the pain too deep, and a loss too overwhelming. The bullets that ripped through his body ripped through my life, and I'm still here trying to pick up the pieces. I'm quite sure I will never find them all. There will be gaping holes left with parts of our story never to be written. It's impossible to come to terms with. Some facts just can't get right with our conscience. They cannot be justified. Two men, part of a caring community, one guy trying to help the other guy out, trying to help him get to a concert. From what I understand, Josiah actually had a different ride to get to the concert, and that fell through. And John was like, hey, I'll take you. I'll go. And on the way, they see someone that needs help, try to help them, and their lives are taken for it. If this isn't a tragedy, I don't know what is. And I'm hopeful that maybe we do see these extra charges added. If we've got the right men, and looking at the logistics of the case today, it seems like it's coming together. I don't know that it's based on the information that we know. I don't know how close it is. Obviously, there's a lot being kept under wraps here, but I'm really hopeful that pretty soon we're going to see articles about the justice that's being served for both these men. There was a GoFundMe open for John that has since been closed. It raised over $2,000. There is one open for Josiah. It's still active. So on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters, thank you to everyone that donates via PayPal, Patreon. We're going to make a donation to this today as well, because I want this family to have everything they need to go through this. Hopefully there's a trial coming up. That's going to mean travel. It's going to mean time away from work. I'm pretty sure that Liz is going to need resources. So I want to help do that. And I want to thank you guys for being there to help allow me to do things like this. There is a Facebook page, Help Bring Josiah Home. I'll have a link to that in the description box down below. I found one for John also, but it was really just for friends and family, so I'm not going to publicize that one. But for Help Bring Josiah Home, they are now on the path to justice. If you want to show your support, please follow them here. Also, some other twists and turns that happen with this case. These very caring people put together a memorial, put the memorial out about 30 feet off the road. I guess the Department of Transportation came through, removed the memorial. That kind of caused a stir. Thankfully, it's been worked out. The memorial has found a new home. It has been put back there. And in an interesting turn, the first ceremony that they had with the memorial, the family members couldn't be there. But because they had to do it again, Liz actually went out there and was there for the second time. So even though it seems like maybe it was a bit of a tough situation to go through, you're trying to just put up a memorial and it gets taken down, it actually had a little bit of a silver lining in terms of a benefit that Liz was able to be there for the second ceremony. So, and I'm really thankful to people that do stuff like this. This is known as the cross guy. He's put up over 200 crosses, many of them for missing persons cases as well. So just good people trying to help others that are in terrible situations. And this is where I just need to remind you one more time, if you have information on this case, please call it in to the FBI. We want them to have every tool at their disposal for getting this prosecution done. If this is the right prosecution, and if it isn't, then we need even more help. So please, also, if you don't have information, just if you have friends in the area, share this video with them. And on top of that, a big thank you to all the brain scratchers out there that support us here week after week, trying to help these families in these tough situations. I have a few people I want to thank that are new patrons. A big thank you to Slime Likely. Thank you, Arlene Jones, Dottie Zikowitz, Brock Willis, and Diana Beggy. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Miss L. Rodriguez recently did. We really appreciate your help as we try to help these families week after week. Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the Lord and Arts channel.